Ra asked, why my eye on the affected side blinks slower and I close my eyelid only halfway? Good question, thank you very much. To answer this question, I have to explain you a little bit, or come back to the explanation of recovery. As you remember, when the degeneration of the facial nerve happens, when the nerve is damaged, the insulation, the myelin sheath of the axon gets damaged. And that myelin sheath, the more thick it is, the better and the quicker the signal goes through the axon to the muscle target. And because you're most probably looking at your symptoms, because your insulation, let's say, of your facial nerve branch that innervates your eyelid has not recovered completely, it's thinner than normal. So the signals, let's say blinking signals from the brain, come slower to your eyelid. That's why it reacts slower. Why it does not close all the way? It's partly related to incomplete recovery of that branch of the nerve that innervates the circular muscle of the eye, and partly it can be related, and most probably it is, because the other muscle that lifts your eyelid, it's called levator palpebrae, the muscle that lifts the palpebra, the eyelid, may be over tense, and that muscle that lifts the eyelid, it's not related, it's not innervated by the facial nerve, it's innervated by the other nerve, oculomotoris, as I said. And it's the same as if you walk for 3 days with the arm like this, then you will probably have difficulty to put it down, because your muscle that lifts the arm will be over tense and it will not be willing to relax so easily. That is the reason why you cannot, most probably why you cannot close your eye fully, because basically the eyelid is very thin, so you don't need that much of effort to be able to close it. So it's a combination of two factors most probably. Okay.
Jean from United States again. I now have synkinesis. In addition to my eye closing when I smile or chew, my eye waters profusely when I eat. It also waters more in general, so that my vision becomes blurred when I look down for any length of time. Is there any treatment for this problem? This is the same eye that twitches when I press my lips together. It's a very good question, Jean. Thank you very much. I know from experience that many patients after facial palsy are confronted with excessive lacrimation. The reason for that is that, well, we have here a tear sac. It's a very small sac that accumulates our tears, liquid, for later use, so to say. And that tear sac is closed by a very small circular muscle, which is called, which has a same structure as the circular muscle of the mouth, or circular muscle of the eye, or the circular muscles in the anus. It's called a sphincter. And every time when we blink or close a blink, the small portion of the tears being released, because that muscle relaxes for a short fraction of a time or a second, it relaxes, lets the tear go into the eye for lacrimation, for lubrication. I'm sorry. When we cry, then that muscle relaxes quite fully and releases the tear liquid. The same or similar mechanism, in any case, irregularity in the function of this muscle happens when, as a kind of synkinesis, it's a kind of synchronous movement of that muscle, or contraction of uncontrolled relaxation of that muscle, when we move our muscles around the mouth. And we have experienced that for most of our patients, I would say all of them, but I would say most of them, the excessive lacrimation has stopped in the course of a rehabilitation program. For some patients, it stops within, after the first visit to the clinic, for some after the second or after the third. But it does happen. We have a patient who, after the very first treatment, before coming to us, he had a very excessive lacrimation during eating. And just after the first treatment, he was in the train going home, and he was eating an apple, and all of a sudden he noticed that his eye is not tearing anymore. So he just called us up on the phone, very excited, and he just shared his new experience. It's not to say that it will happen with everyone after the very first treatment, but our experience says that lacrimation reduces and eventually stops altogether in the course of the rehabilitation. I'm still afraid that my eye will dry out. Will I be able to wear my contact lenses during the period I still have to wait for my eye about every 2 hours? Well, especially in the acute phase of the facial palsy or in the early stages of the recovery, indeed, you may be experiencing dry eye because you're blinking not as often and not as fully as you would blink regularly, or as your healthy eye is blinking. And secondly, because there could be some disruption in the function of the lacrimal gland, which is partly, it is also innervated by the facial nerve or by that little muscle in the tear sac, which is regulating the release of the tear. Well, you don't have to be afraid that it will dry out. You may patch your eye closed for the night, or you may wear a certain cover. Like in Holland, it's called the horlogeglas, the watch glass. It's a transparent plastic cover for your eye, which has a certain adhesive part, with or without holes. It's called the moisture chamber. I remember the moisture chamber, which you can wear when you go out, if you feel uncomfortable, or when you go to sleep. But this, I believe, is the case only after within a relatively short period, maybe a few weeks or a couple of months after the onset. Okay, Thompson's also asking, I also feel like there is a lot of liquid under my eyes. Do you have a feeling, or you have a bag here, the eye bag here? If you feel an eye bag, then it will probably help. Just regular, normal, gentle massage without pressing too much will help to drain the excessive liquid from your ear bag, from under your eye. And otherwise, I'm sorry, I don't really understand the question.